Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shepard Smith, Head of Marketing here at Gravitate, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. The topic of today's conversation is data analytics for government relations and advocacy. And while we'll move quickly through the next 30 minutes, we welcome questions and would like you to submit them at any time using the written chat function you'll see on the right-hand side of your screen. Everyone in the audience is muted, and we'll be sending all of you a link to a recording of this webinar afterwards. We have an all-star lineup of speakers today, all of whom are longtime association industry professionals. Our first presenter today is Rob Miller, CAE, who many of you know both as a senior association executive at 340B Health, a trade association, and as the former president and co-founder of Vectra, the company that invented the modern web-based AMS with the launch of NetForum. Up next will be Cecilia Seth, CAE, who more than likely every single one of you know. Cecilia is president and founder of association consultancy Rogue Tulips and is here in this capacity. She has over 3 decades of association management experience, including being president and CEO of the American College of Healthcare Administrators, and has served on multiple ASAE committees. Our primary speaker today is Ann DeCarty, CAE, along with serving as a consultant with Cecilia at Rogue Tulips, and is the managing director of Hillstaffer LLC, a government relations consulting firm. Ann has more than 30 years of federal, state, and local government relations experience, including strategic GR planning, Hill Days, grassroots and grasstops programs, and direct lobbying. An active member of ASAE, she is the immediate past chair of the Government Relations and Advocacy Professionals Advisory Council. Rounding out this lineup is Brandon Loishin, a data analytics subject matter expert who focuses exclusively on uses of analytics for associations. He's going to show us some real-world examples. Rob, I will now turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you very much, Shepard. I really appreciate that introduction. So obviously we have a presentation today for GR and advocacy professionals, and my suspicion is the summer was not quite as quiet on the legislative front as you might have thought it was going to be. And I also bet, looking at my crystal ball, that now that you've gotten back, it's September, and those goals that you set at the beginning of the year are looming very large. And what probably hasn't changed is you're still having troubles getting data out of your AMS and probably having issues with your GR tool. And certainly, and most likely is that GR tool and your AMS are probably not integrated. Those are some of the challenges that we're here to talk about today, and that we're here to help solve. And some of that's in the process of thinking through these challenges and coming up with better ways, and some of it helps with the right technology. So that's really the topic that we're going to be hitting on today. One thing I like to say when our philosophy at Gravitate is that we like to have data analytics for everyone, which means that we do not want you to have to go to your IT professional to provide you with information so you can run your business. We want the most junior GR professional all the way up to an executive of your organization be able to touch the data and be able to use it for valuable purposes. That's really what we try and do every day. With that, I am going to turn it over to Cecilia.
Great, thank you, Rob, and thanks for inviting us to be here today. So as a career-long association executive, I've always understood the importance of data and how data drives our decisions and how it helps us make better decisions. And it also helps us assess the environment in which we're operating. And one of the things I've always seen throughout my career is that associations have data everywhere. It's in files, it's in your AMS, it's in your Excel charts, it's notes on your notepad on your desk. And that's where we have soft data and hard data, and we try to pull all of these things together. But making it useful every day is an ongoing commitment, and it can be difficult to integrate it into your regular processes. But the concept of blended data, which is a new way of looking at it, it's not necessarily new, so to speak, but it's a much better phrase for capturing all of this different information that we use as our data points. So when you bring together blended data, you can more strongly support your organization's efforts to fulfill its mission and reach its strategic goals. And so today what we're going to be talking about, and as Shepard mentioned, Andar Conti is our main speaker today, we're going to discuss some of the typical challenges of government relations efforts and how data supports these solutions. You see on the screen several challenges that relate to government relations. And you might be looking at these thinking, well, gee, those kind of sound like challenges I have throughout my organization. But today, we're going to talk about these challenges and how they relate to government relations. So these challenges are driven by data. So we have to make decision making. So from the CEO perspective, data drives our decision making, whether it's member growth, fundraising, program management, or advocacy activities. So for today's discussion, though, we're just going to use the term government relations, but if you call your program advocacy or outreach, the questions we're answering today and the information we're going to share is going to be equally helpful, because it's basically how can I pull together all this data, motivate people to participate in sharing this information and building the case or the argument for legislators or regulators about how an action they're going to take is going to affect your membership. So when it comes to government relations, this is when you're blending your data. Blended data is especially helpful because it doesn't just gather information about who your members are, but what they do. And when you collect this data about what they do, meaning are they supporting your PAC? Do they send emails to legislators when you ask them to? Do they make those phone calls? Do they participate in your fly-ins when you bring people together? If you can find a way to bring all of that data together and integrate it into, into your overall data strategy, this is going to help your government relations program be more successful. And I am now going to turn this over to Anne so she can discuss some of the ways that blended data can support your GR strategy and how you can capture some of this data in other ways. There are tools out there like Nucleus. Nucleus is a great tool for bringing together all of your data, because not only does it look at your AMS, it will pull information from a variety of other software packages where you store this data. So I'm going to hand it off to Anne.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. As Cecilia has very appropriately spelled out, there are a lot of challenges that go along with a program, and for all of you who are in government relations, I would imagine that you probably want to increase your member engagement. You want to identify your crucial influencers. You want to find ways to aggregate the data and tell your stories. So how can we help to do that? So what data, first of all, what is that data going to do to support your efforts? Well, first and foremost, we have to know that you want to match your assets to your decision makers. That is the data that you generally are very familiar with and that you are doing already. You want to be able to use zip plus 4 district matching so that you identify where your people are and which elected officials represent them. The second point on using data to support your GR efforts is to illustrate the policy impacts that support your advocacy position. This is extremely important because obviously you want to be able to not just tell the story. The stories are important, and we all talk about storytelling in advocacy these days, but storytelling is more about not just telling the personal stories that the constituents are telling, but you also want to be able to talk about the stories of what is the hard data behind what it is that you're trying to achieve in your advocacy effort. And then third, you want to obviously know that objective data is credible and appreciated. I can't tell you how many times I go when trying to convince a legislator or staff of the value of our particular position, why it is that we need to do that, And they're always looking for objective data. The kinds of things that they want to look for are things like not just how many people are in their district, and don't forget the power of constituency. They always want to know how many are in the district. But it may be about spending. It may be about being able to tell them, if you're in the manufacturing world, how many plants you have in the district and how many employees. What is the economic impact? If you're a hospital or maybe a series of hospitals, a chain of hospitals, you want to talk about how many patients are served or the kinds of impacts, health impacts you're being able to provide to people. So it's important to be able to go ahead and do that. So we want to go ahead and make sure that your objective data is credible, but I can also tell you it's very much appreciated. Going into a legislator's office and being able to tell them, here are the numbers when they're asking for them, is something that is very helpful to them, because as much as they want to support your position, there are times that they really need that background information and they need to have those facts. Next slide, and I think we're a slide behind. So we want to talk about what data is available and what data you're capturing, because obviously you can only make these points if you have the right information. One of the things that I sadly find is that many organizations don't capture nearly what they should be. Let's start by talking a little bit about your AMS. Your association management system is, for most organizations, the key depository for the information and data that you collect. And frankly, in my mind, most people are using a very, very small part of the functionality of their AMS. So I think it's important to take a look at what it is that you collect, and then be able to look at what it is you want to have to make your case with decision makers. So in looking at what you have, you obviously want to think about things like the contact information, work addresses, home addresses. Where are your assets? Where are your plants? Where are your hospitals? Where are your patients? Where are your members? If you're an association. If you're a trade association and your association members are corporations, where are their assets? Where are their people? And it's important to be able to recognize that all of that exists. Now, that's what we would consider. Some of that is the contact data. Some of it's the transactional data. How many people are registering or purchasing goods from you? If you sell white papers, if you sell other kinds of materials, you're keeping track of it. But you also want to keep track of the registrations for conferences and webinars and other such things, because these are some of the things that help you understand what it is that your organization is providing, but also the extent to which those products and services are being utilized by your membership when you're evaluating not just the value you provide them, but also when you look at their engagement. And we all know that the primary reason that people renew is because they engage. So knowing what data you have, knowing what you could have, and knowing what you would be able to show, because decision makers, legislators, or regulators are actually thinking about certain kinds of data with regards to how they're making decisions. Those are the kinds of things that you want to be thinking about. Next, one of the things we talk about, so now you've taken a look at the data you have, you've taken a look at what you'd like to have, and you're making that wish list. How is it that you're going to be able to acquire that data? Well, bottom line is you are going to have to make the case with your relevant audiences. Those audiences are your board and your leadership. And data, just as GR supports your organizational strategy and goals, you have got to show your leadership and board how the data will help you achieve those goals. In doing so, you also have to work with staff. And I'm not talking about just your fellow GR staff. The most important part about this, and I see this in so many organizations, You have to work cross-functionally, gain the trust of others in the organization who are involved in the collection, management, and/or storage of data, and make sure that you show the value that you're going to bring by collecting more of this data to what it is that they do. But it's also important that you help them understand that you respect what their roles and their parameters can be. Sometimes I hear people who talk about getting more data, and they tell me that they've never spoken with their IT people other than to ask for a report. I think it's really important that you have those cross-functional relationships. So make sure that as you're beyond just selling to your leadership and your board, that you're selling this to others across your staff within your organization. And then, of course, you want to build an understanding of the need with your members. Your members are this is going to help them and help you use this information to tell the industry or profession story or your corporate organization story to decision makers. And by doing so, you have a greater opportunity to go back to what we started out, which is achieving goals. And frankly, it's also really important because you're going to up the game. You're going to make sure that your GR program is improved in terms of the purposes it serves, the goals it achieves, as well as making it possible for legislators and regulators to look to you as an organization that provides good information. Now, in making the case for the need with these audiences, you want to make sure that you address antitrust and other legal and security issues, because it's important that if people are giving you this data, that they understand that you're going to protect it and protect them in the process. And by doing all of the things and making the case for need and security, your members who are going to need to provide this data will see the value in it, and they will then understand and be more than happy to provide the requested data. After all, this is just another way for them to get more for their money, for their membership value of being part of your association. Once, of course, you get the data, don't rest on your laurels, because you want to make sure you maintain current data. If you have organizations that are expanding and employing new and additional people, then you want to make sure that that positive impact on the local environment is being identified and communicated. So in order to make sure that your data is good, make sure you maintain it. And for association members, one of the things I have found is that in doing your annual membership renewal, it's a really good time to request updates, but I would also suggest that you provide them, by making it easy for them, provide them with a report of last year's data and show them in the one column what it was, and then they can easily track the new pieces of data to parallel that. So if you're going to make sure you maintain it, you want to also make sure that you are making it easy for them to do them. And last but not least, you want to set up systems that collect the volunteer data. You want to identify your highly motivated and committed members by being able to show how much it is that they're doing. This is why it's important to integrate your systems, your AMS, your government relations tool, as well as a data tool like Nucleus, and make sure that all of those can be connected. And I know that as I pass this along, I want you to be thinking about ways that you can use your data in ways that are going to be described to you. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pass this along to Rob, who can tell you a little bit more about blending the data.
Great, thanks, Ann. And so you brought up a couple of really good points. I'm going to move through this quickly so Brandon has a chance to show you a couple of quick scenarios of the software. But when we're talking about blending, The reason why we do this is we want to bring more value out of your data, because you have data in your AMS, you have data in your email marketing tool, you have data in your GR tool, but they're all kind of, you know, alone, they're disconnected. And the idea is we want to bring those out and blend them together so that suddenly the value of one plays against the other. So in this particular example, I have 4 systems: the association management system, an email marketing tool, a GR tool, and then engagement score. And in this case, I could run a query based on who's a member, who's clicked on an email marketing tool, and who's sent a letter. Those are things that would be very, very difficult to do if you were not pulling that data into a blended source. And then when we get to the engagement score, this really builds on what Ann was saying, all those activities that are happening. It's like, how do you acquire more data? Well, one of the ways you acquire more data is you generate it. And you're generating that every day by somebody having an activity with your system, whether they're reading an email, writing a letter, registering an event. And what we need to do is we need to score that, give a value for that activity, and then ultimately you can get the highest score to figure out who your most engaged and least engaged members are. And of course, those most engaged members are the ones you want to call on when you need a call made on your behalf for a member of Congress. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brandon so he can give you a quick presentation of the software. He'll be showing you live systems, so you'll get a chance to see how it works in action. And I'll let him carry it on. I'm just going to change the presenter to him.
Great. Okay, so thanks, Rob. Thanks, everyone. So basically what I'm going to show you today is some examples of the ways that we can utilize our tool Nucleus in order to help in some of the initiatives that Rob and Ann and Cecilia talked about a little bit earlier. So the first site that we're going to look at is an organization called 340B Health, and they are a trade association that's based down here in Washington, D.C. And as Rob mentioned, one of the things that they're doing is they're utilizing something called engagement scoring, which helps in their GR efforts. And so the systems that we're pulling data from, in their case, it's 3 systems, which are IMIS, Informs, and Higher Logic. All the interactions that their members take with them accumulate points. Their GR system as well accumulate points, and so then we are able to, score to find the highest or the least engaged members for the organization. So here you're going to see that we've placed the member organizations into buckets based on those scores. So we'll see here, this is a low engagement score, medium, high, or very high. The next thing that you should know about Nucleus is that you're able to dive down deeper into any of the high-level visualizations or data points that you're looking at here. So if I dive into this engagement levels by org count, what's going to allow me to see are all of those different buckets that we've classified here and how they're shrinking or growing over a span of time. But what Rob's organization, what similar organizations might do, is start to do things like looking at their geography. So if you know that there is a reason for you to be looking for somebody in the state of New York, you want to ask them to reach out to a member of Congress, right? I can come into this particular area, I can filter by New York State. Once I find it here, I click on New York, it's going to update the visualization for me to now I'm only looking at members who belong in that particular state. Now, the really cool thing is that when I'm working inside of Nucleus, there are a whole bunch of other things that I'm taking a look at up here, but for our purposes today, I want to look at this data table down here at the bottom of the screen. And what this is going to allow me to do is take a look at the organizations, and once it loads up here in a second, you'll see it's going to show me all the organizations that are in New York. It's going to show me their congressional district. It's going to show me their name. So here, this is like a live data table, so I can go ahead and adjust it if I want to. It's going to show me how many engagement points that they have with the association. Right, so it's going to allow me to identify key targets for our GR efforts. And so here I can go ahead and filter just like I would in Excel or sort, and I can go ahead and find, okay, NYU Langone Hospitals is the most engaged in the state of New York. Maybe they are a prime candidate for me to reach out to for whatever effort it is that I'm trying to achieve. Right. The other thing too is that I'm actually able to take a look at all the individual points and activities that these member organizations are taking part in order to gain this engagement score here. And so by doing that, what I really need to do is just switch over to this other data table that's being used as a part of this engagement scoring functionality. And it's just going to show me, and it'll take 1 second for it to load up here. It's going to show me all of the individual points that our members are taking part in. And so I'm going to be able to see, whether or not they opened emails, they came to events, whether or not they actually went through and sent that letter to a member of Congress. And here you're going to see each of the activity types. Right? And we also have a column here called company name, where again, I'm able to sort or filter. And if I wanted to find exactly what NYU Langone Hospital, did with us, I can go ahead and filter by that particular column here. And so you'll see these activity types, right? So, Montefiore, Nyack, I hope I'm not butchering that name, hospital, had this type of activity and accumulated this number of points from it, so on and so forth. You can also do that same type of analysis from the congressional district level. So if you wanted to be able and take a look at different congressional districts and see what hospitals are active in a particular congressional district, if you're trying to reach out to that particular member of Congress or something like that, right? Those filters are available for you to utilize here. We're also able to filter by any other data that you might have stored about your members. So if there are, different types of members that are a member of your organization, and maybe they care about different things based on, the setting that they work in or their profession or their area of expertise, right? Those are all additional things that you'd be able to filter by over here on the right-hand side of the screen, so that you're making sure you're contacting and engaging with the appropriate member to help you in your initiatives. The last thing that I want to show you, and I'm going to hop over to another site here, is that we're able to take a look at this from a congressional district breakdown geographically as well. So here I'm just kind of zoomed in a little bit on, I think I'm looking at New Jersey right here. And if I mouse over any of the individual congressional districts, you're going to see when I look at New Jersey, I think it's District 11, right? I'm going to see that the representative is Mikey Sherrill, right? A Democrat, and there are 20 members who are in that particular congressional district. Now, the other thing that we could potentially display here are other things that are important for you to know about any given congressional district, right? Whether that's the number of members that are there. If you're somebody like Greg Holcomb from the Vacation, Rental Management Association, maybe it's the number of properties that you have in that particular congressional district, or the number of guests that you've served in that area. So, you just click on whichever particular congressional district you want to see, and then there, could be potential data. So this is a site that's actually in implementation right now, so we don't see any of that here, but there, if you had data or if we wanted to display any additional data about this congressional district, we could do it here on the screen. Okay, so that's it for me. I think I'm going to kick it back over to Rob to see if we have time for questions or if there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Brandon. And I think we do have a little bit of time left for questions. In fact, I'm going to start with Anne. All this stuff we're talking about, it sounds like it's a little difficult, and so the question is it worth it?
That's a great question, and I would say it's definitely worth it. And all you have to ask yourself, whether you're the CEO of the organization, or whether you are the head of government relations, or you are any other member of the government relations staff, the bottom line is you want to be successful. So if you want to be successful, if you want to get credibility with elected officials, and if you want to reach your goals, then it's definitely worth it. Is it hard? You know what? I think people like to think things are harder than they really are. I think that this is one of the most worthwhile exercises an organization can go through to improve not just their government relations, but there's a lot of other things that can be seen that they can evaluate as an association by having this kind of data and being able to blend it the way you've just showed us.
Thanks, Anne. And I'm going to add just a little bit to that. One of the things is that you have all these systems. You have your AMS, you have an email marketing tool, you have a GR tool. So in many cases, you actually have all this data. What you don't have is you don't have a way to pull it all together in one place and blend it. And of course, that's what we do with a product like Nucleus. And usually it takes about 6 weeks to get it to a place where you have real usable, actionable data. So you still, before the end of the year, have an ability to implement a system like this and have it impact your 2019. So is it a little bit hard? It is a little bit hard, but it actually is something that can be done relatively quickly and bring tremendous value. So with that, I think we've run out of time. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. And while we've shown you some examples of, Brandon showed you some specific client examples using Nucleus, we know that every one of you is different. So please let us know if you'd like to talk about your specific challenges and needs. We'll obviously get Anne and Cecile involved as appropriate. And with all webinars, we have recorded this session and we will send it out to you shortly. So please feel free to share it with your colleagues. And finally, thank you again and have a wonderful day.